All right, this video is going to teach you how to do the fix a photo assignment. And these are your photos here. There's 5 of them. And I'm going to show you in Photopea and in Photoshop. So that way, if you don't have access, to one of them, at least you're able to complete it, on Photopea or Photoshop. So you have options here. I went ahead and just started with this photo. Your goal, and it says in the assignment, you need to remove the basketball hoop. So not that there's anything wrong with the hoop or that I don't like basketball hoops, but a lot of times there's like distractions in images that we want to get rid of. So we're going to use the spot healing brush for this. I went ahead and I just did File Open, and I opened it up. I'm also going to create a new layer because I don't want to destroy this bottom image. I want to have a layer that I can turn on and off to kind of see the original image. That way I can easily fix any mistakes. When you have your new layer, which is right down here, you're going to go to up here where it says source, and you're going to say current and below. So make sure it says current and below and not just current layer. And this will allow us to sample from this bottom layer. So now I have my spot healing brush selected, and this is where you may need to adjust the size and hardness depending on what you're healing. This is probably a pretty good size, and I'm just going to start by sampling enough here. We'll just kind of start with the top part and see how this goes. Let's see. Okay, not too bad. A little blurry here, but not terrible. And if it doesn't quite work the way you want it to, that's where Control Z is definitely your friend. So I'm just kind of taking it piece by piece. It's important your brush isn't too big or too small, and this will ensure that it's accurate. Whoop, it's thinking. Give it a second. Okay, not too bad. There's a little bit of fuzziness there on the tree, but that's not terrible. I'm going to see how this goes. Sometimes it's tricky when you have a lot of texture in the background. I did a little funkiness with the house, so I'm going to do Control Z here. I'm actually going to zoom in just to be a little more precise. Let's see how this goes. We'll just do a little less this time. That's a little better. Right about there. Let's see how this looks. That's not too bad. A little bit of fuzziness there. I might have to play around with the clone stamp on that one. So that was with the healing brush. I got a fair amount there, but I feel like it needs some touch-ups. I mean, it's not terrible, but it definitely has some areas that could need improvement. So now I'm going to go to the clone stamp, which is this one right over here. Once again, I'm going to choose my size. Oop, that's probably too big. And I'm going to do a hardness of 0. Let's just try that. I think that that will be a good size. Now, with the clone stamp, if you go ahead and just click, it's going to say you need to hold Alt or K and clicking on the image. So I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard, and this is where I'm sampling. So if I want to sample these trees, for example, maybe right about here, I'm going to hold down Alt and click. And now I can bring this over. Whoops, make sure this is turned on. I forgot to turn on my current and below. There we go. So Alt and click. And then you can kind of see how it's like replicating what's there. So it's kind of a way to put some image back in. I realize that the hardness is a little too much, so I'm gonna, or it's not enough. Let's try maybe something like that. I've already sampled it. Maybe just click a little bit there. Just to fill it in a little bit. That's not too bad. Let's try over here. I'm gonna do Alt. Let's just like sample right about there. Just to kind of, and I might even make this a little smaller, just to kind of fill it in. Now this is only going to be useful for small areas. This is not what you want for like big areas. You see how it kind of fills it in for you, makes it a little more natural. I'm just kind of going in and adding a little texture. This is where you get to be a little artistic. Not too bad. It's not perfect, but you get the idea. It's pretty close. This tree still looks a little funky to me, so I'm probably going to mess around with that a little more. Same with right here. It's like a little blurry. So back with the clone stamp, I'll make this a little bigger this time. And you can see the difference here. So here you can see it's a lot bigger because I made it a lot larger. But if I hold down Alt to sample the sky, for example, whoops, try that again. All right, there we go. And then you can kind of see how I'm filling that in. There we go. just to get rid of some of those areas that look a little, and using the lower hardness is really good for that. So you get rid of any like strange hard edges. There you go. So like there, I know I could fill in a little more. Whoops, I'll try that again. If it starts replicating like other stuff like that, that just means I have to take a new sample. So Alt, sample, there we go. Just Alt and click with your mouse is all you're doing. You know what, that's pretty good, I'd say. So from here, I can do File, Export As, and then JPEG, and then I know I'm ready to go on that image. I'm going to show you the same thing in Photoshop. So again, we have the image opened. You just do File, Open in Photoshop. I made a new layer, which is the plus sign here. Instead of that option in Photopea, where it's like the current and below option, you're going to just make sure it says content aware, and then just make sure sample all layers is selected. Otherwise, it's not going to recognize the background layer. So we have the spot healing brush. This looks like a good size and hardness. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Once again, you're going to cover over what you want to destroy, basically. There you go. And you'll see that, in my opinion, Photoshop does a better job of it. It's got a little bit higher capabilities. Just keep going until you get to this part. I'm just going to make this a little smaller, I think, because again, you don't want your brush to be too big, but you also don't want it to be too small. I'm just getting rid of this pole here. And that's probably better. Nice. So if you compare Photoshop to Photopea, if you look at that, I mean, there's just a few tiny little fragments here and there where it's a little off, but otherwise that basketball hoop is gone. So I really like Photoshop for this assignment for that reason. If I go back, I can show you the clone stamp, which is this one again. It looks very similar to the Photopea one. We're going to sample current and below. And I can show you again with Alt and then clicking and kind of how that can fill in. If I go in here with the top of that building, get rid of that. Personally, if I was doing this one, I'd probably just focus on the spot healing brush, but sometimes it makes sense to do the clone stamp. Kind of depends on your problem, like what the issue is. Just kind of fill that in. Don't forget to play around with the hardness. 0% is that really soft, fuzzy brush. Then, sometimes it's appropriate to be at 50%, 100% would be a hard brush. So it kind of depends on the lines you're going for. Like here on the building, it's got a straight line, so I'd probably want to focus more on a hard brush for that. Just see, I might make this a little smaller, just to get more of that hard edge. It's a little more of a straight edge. That just seems to make more sense. But now if I zoom back out with my zoom tool, again, it's totally gone. So I can export this by going to File, Export, and then Export As. So very similar to Photopea. Format as JPEG, and then we'll click Export. Now, the reason, let's call this edited. The reason why we put the layer on top is because by clicking that layer on and off, we can see the original, and that's going to really help us understand, did we do this correctly? Does it look like everything has been removed, in a way where it looks realistic? Because that's your goal. You want it to be as realistic as possible. So this really helps with that. Just make sure you leave this turned on. The eye icon needs to be checked when you export it. Otherwise, it'll export without that, which is not what you want. So then you can move on to the next photo and just take it from there. And it's pretty much the same process. Some of them are harder than others. So just keep trying. If you need to go back, remember Control-Z in Photoshop and then Control-Alt-Z you can also do in Photopea. And I think you can do Control-Z in Photopea as well, but that will let you redo and undo options, in the programs. All right. Hopefully that gets you started. If you have any questions, you can always raise your hand and I will come over to help you out.